Thanks for joining us.
Talkline Network Radio, America's longest-running Jewish broadcast network, the voice of the Jewish community.
Welcome to the podcast. You are now tuned in to this episode of our podcast. Today, we are going to interview some of the greatest and most influential minds in our field. And now, please welcome your host.
You're listening to Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast on the air since 1981.
And we're back. It's always good to have Abe Eisner with us, community leader, philanthropist, the chairman of the board of HASC, as well as many other Jewish organizations, a close friend of Rabbi Matisyahu Salomon of blessed memory and his family. So good to have you back on the program. So welcome.
Welcome. Thank you very much. It's an unbelievable major loss for the Jewish community. Klal Yisrael lost a giant in Torah, a giant in Avodah, a giant in Gemilas Chasodim. Unbelievable combination. Unforgettable and probably irreplaceable. What else can I tell you?
How many years did you know the Rav Hagon?
About 15 or 20 years. I was originally introduced by a close friend of mine, Yankee Meyer. We were together upstate New York in Lake Forest, and the Mashgiach, blessed memory, used to come, Ben Azmanim used to come up to Lake Forest and spend a week or 10 days together with his Rebbitzin in Yankee Meyer's house. And we had the chus of having the Shabbos HaGudel. He used to say Shabbos HaGudel drosha for many years. And it was unbelievable having him and the Rebbitzin there on a yearly basis for a couple of years. So Yankee Meyer introduced me. I mean, obviously, I knew about the Mashgiach and I met him before as well. But on a personal note, the relationship actually started in Yankee Meyer's house.
Wow. And of course, Rabbi Matisyahu Salomon passed away, who was the Mashgiach Ruchani, the spiritual mentor, supervisor for the Lakewood Yeshiva. But you probably also saw in the 15, 20 years that you knew him, the growth of the Lakewood Yeshiva.
Yeah, unbelievable. Obviously, the yeshiva grew on a daily basis. Amokim Torah, Amokim Tefillah, Lakewood as a whole. I have to say that someday I may wind up in Lakewood myself, as most of my family married.
You got a Borough Park flap. I keep hearing Lakewood, Tom's River. Everybody's moving out there.
Well, let's not get into that conversation right now because that's a Shalom Bayis issue. Because my wife and I, you know, are we ready to move? Are we not ready to move? Let's stick to the Mashgiach.
Okay, no problem, not yet. But it seems like everybody's moving to Lakewood. It's one of the fastest growing Jewish frum communities in the United States, no question about it.
He definitely has set a great foundation for Lakewood as a Mokum Torah.
He was also very erudite. I enjoyed listening to his British accent. I think that added to...
Absolutely. Had a class to it. Whether he was learning, whether he was saying Dvar Torah, or whether we were having a general conversation about, I felt comfortable to call the house and come over to discuss community issues that I was involved in and get hadracha from the Mashgiach, which way to go, whether it was Camp HASC, whether it was, I don't know if you know, I'm very involved in Boin Olam as well. And so
people have trouble with having children.
Right. So, he asked me to get involved and he gave me a hadracha, so I had to have many conversations with him to make sure that I'm on track with his line of thinking. After a while, I realized and understood his line of thinking. So
maybe share with us, the impact he had on you and the organization you're with. What line of thinking did he impart to you that you were able to develop?
Yashrus. Whatever you do, run it the right way, be straight. If there's any conflicting issues, just make sure that you keep it on track. And so that there's no machloikas. Very, very anti-hearing about a machloikas. He was very upset when he heard that there's possible machloikas in any organization whatsoever. And so many times when I talked to him about whatever the issues were, he always focused on making sure that whatever we're doing, that we're not causing any machloikas whatsoever.
That's so important, and we need to take that advice today. As we do, unfortunately, that's one of our biggest problems: the lack of unity and the divisiveness, including in our communities.
Yeah, well, in our community, out of our community, wherever it is. That's one great impact that he had on me and our relationship.
So I want to focus on your other hat and dealing with the chairman of the board of HASC, which deals with special needs children. I can tell you, I've been on the air for 43 years. And when I first spoke about special needs children, people were ready to tar and feather me. How dare you talk about special needs kids on the air? We shouldn't talk about it publicly. A lot has changed. So I'm curious to know, when I know HASC is in the forefront, and Camp HASC in the summertime, of course, is legendary. What it's able to do and take kids from different backgrounds and have counselors and also from different backgrounds. Many shidduchim came about because of it. What advice did the Mashgiach give you regarding special needs kids and running HASC?
Mashgiach was constantly, whenever I walked in to talk about anything, whatever the subject was, his first question was always, "In was herzlich und HASC? How are we doing in HASC? Are we taking care of the campers?" And the reason he asked all those questions, obviously he had a feel for and a heart for the children of special needs. But he started coming up to Camp HASC many, many years ago. Actually, Yankee Meir, Zecher Tzadik L'Rocha, is the one that brought him up the first time to Camp HASC for a tour. And he was so touched by what he saw that for many years, until the last few years when he wasn't well anymore, he used to come on a yearly basis. For many years, he used to come together with his Rebbitzin, and they enjoyed every minute of it. He used to come up to the mountains for 2 weeks right after Tisha B'Av. I believe he stayed in Camp Aguda. But the first Friday of Shabbos Nachmu, he always spent in Camp HASC, giving Dvar Torah, and then talking to every and any counselor that wanted to talk to him and giving him brachas. But it was unbelievable when a counselor, a young lady, came over to him with a camper to introduce the camper, and she asked for a bracha for shidduchim from the Mashgiach. And the Mashgiach looked at her directly and said, "Don't ask me for a bracha. You need to ask your camper to give you a bracha. This camper is a heilige neshama, and if anybody can give you a bracha, it's your camper." And he used to say that many times to other individual counselors that asked for brachas while they were in camp.
Wow, amazing. Was there a concert Shabbos Nachmu, a big event in Camp HASC every year?
No, it had nothing to do. He came because he came. It had nothing to do with any concerts. It had nothing to do with anything. He came to spend a couple of hours before Shabbos, and he used to say that the Shabbos after his visit to Shabbos Nachmu is his and his Rebbitz's best Shabbos of the year. And I remember one year where the campers actually baked a challah. So when he came with the Rebbitzin, and I've seen the pictures online, and there's a clip online out there on YouTube where they presented the Rebbitzin with a challah. He talked about it in his drosha, and actually talked about it afterwards and told everybody that he made sure to eat up every crumb of that challah. It meant so much to him. And the Rebbitzin, Alei Sholem, wrote a letter to the staff of Camp HASC, which is also, I noticed somebody putting it online the other day, thanking the camp for a wonderful visit to camp, and inviting, and how much the challah and everything meant to her, and inviting the counselors, whoever wants to feel free to come to their house for a Shabbos. I'll never forget, it was about the next summer, we were trying to get two important counselors to come back to camp, and they were kind of on the line. They weren't sure whether they can make it, they can't make it. And they started talking to me about the letter that the Rebbitzin wrote about the visit to spend the Shabbos. And the deal that I cut with them, I said, you know what? If you agree to come back to camp this summer, both of you, I'll make sure you have a Shabbos in the Mashgiach's house. And they said, sure, you got a deal. And nothing to do with money. So I called the Rebbitzin and I said, Rebbitzin, in reference to the letter that you sent, there are two young men that like to call you and they'd like to come for Shabbos. And she said, no problem. Well, guess what? The next Shabbos, both these guys were there. They were devastated last week when they heard that the Mashgiach was nifted. They plan on going to be Menachem Uvel as well. But they said they'll never forget that Shabbos. The Mashgiach and the Rebbitzin treated them at the family table at the Sudas on Shabbos like they're part of the family. So,
Amazing
you know,
story. These are the stories that really outlast and
yeah,
legacy, because it's not just the learning, it's the kindness, it's the
that's the point.
that really is outstanding. People, and that's what we're meant to learn from that. So thank you for sharing it with us.
Yeah, and the physics that he gave the staff in Camp HASC when he talked while he was there was he saw and realized how hard they work, each counselor, and taking care of those campers. And
My son was there one summer. It's a lot of hard work.
yeah, and what he always said was, these are malacha ashuras, these are malachim, and your campers are heilig neshamas. And when Mashiach comes, his first stop is going to be in Camp HASC. And please remember to tell him that I'm a good friend here as well. He always repeated that line. And yeah, you're all malacha ashuras. That's the way he looked at the staff. You know, so his Gemilas Chesed is avoida. Again, I'm not here to talk about his Torah. That goes without saying. I'll leave that to the people that actually spend time learning with the Mishkan. But the avoida and the Gemilas Chasadim that he pushed and he was on top of was unbelievable. Unbelievable.
Amazing. As we close out, I know you have an upcoming concert and big event sold out. So that's the big event. So are you able to tell us who the performers are?
No, this call has nothing to do with the concert. So, but being that you asked, all I can tell you is I'm not singing.
You sure?
Yeah, I'm not singing. They give me a mic every year, but they haven't turned it on yet. But Baruch Hashem, now that you asked,
you may not sing, but you have a voice.
Yeah, I want to thank you for asking. I want to thank your audience actually, because we're Baruch Hashem sold out as of 2 weeks ago. And please don't call me for tickets. I just don't have any. And we're doing a lot of good things at the urging of the Mashgiach up in Camp HASC. And as an example, he urged us many years ago to expand the camp. We went ahead and bought a property, 200 acres adjacent to the camp. We haven't developed it yet, but someday when the time is right and we can put the money together, yeah, we need to build another campus, because right now we have a waiting list. And there's a story about that I'll never forget. I walked into the Mashgiach with a map showing him the property that we're looking to buy to get a bracha, and to ask the Mashgiach if we should do it. And he asked me, okay, so where's the property? I showed it to him. Then he asked, so where's the camp? And I showed it to him. He looks at the map, he turns it around, and he says, and where does the property connect? It was unbelievable. This is not somebody who's in the real estate business, but he was right. There was a small piece of property between the two properties, about 10 acres that somebody else owned, and we needed to go out and buy that as well. But
Wow.
he was able to realize that there's something that's just not fitting there. And he gave us a bracha, and he told us to do anything and everything necessary. And so, yeah, the last 3 years, we built a couple of new bunkhouses from the proceeds of the money that we get from the concert, which, by the way, covers our day-to-day scholarships for the campers as well. And this year, Baruch Hashem, because of some donors, philanthropists, we're building a $7 million medical center for our campers.
And
this is all at the camp. And this is
at the camp itself. Wow.
Yeah, and this is all at the urging of the Mashgiach. He always urged to push forward.
Are you going to name any wing of the building or the hospital in his honor, because he was the inspiration?
So I can't talk about that yet, because I need to talk about the family first, if it's okay, and I'd love to do that. So next week, probably Monday, when I go to be Menachem Oval, because I believe his sons, one lives in Eretz Yisrael and two live in Manchester, and so they were at Eretz Yisrael for this big levaya by the Mary Yeshiva. They'll be back Hashem Sunday morning, and so I plan on going Monday to be Menachem Oval, and would like to ask that question because we have a section at the medical building that we'll talk about dedicating it in his memory. Absolutely.
And I want to thank you for all that you do for HASC and for many different Jewish organizations, whether it's Boni Olam, and you're involved with the good. There's so many different groups. Abe Eisner, chairman of the board of HASC, thank you for joining us, and continued success in helping out those that need special help.
Thank you, Zev. It's always nice talking to you. And thank you to all your listeners.
Thank you for tuning in to
Talkline with Zev Brenner, America's premier Jewish broadcast, the pulse beat of the Jewish community.
For continuous Jewish programs, TalklineNetwork.com, or our 24-hour-a-day listen line at 641-741-0389. For past shows, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube, Instagram, and all major podcast platforms, or jewishpodcast.org. Thanks for listening to the TalklineNetwork.com.
Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram.
Terrific. Great job.